of one experiment. Now, the definition of an N of one experiment, and I know that you guys understand what it is, but I'll just share with you the definition because I found this interesting. And that is, an N of one trial is a clinical trial in which a single patient is the entire trial, a single case study, which is why every single one of you is a scientist. You can perform an N of one experiment on yourself. I do this all the time on my body. I do experiments for the purpose of being able to learn about my body or to learn about something that I'm curious about. So as you guys are thinking about, I know she told me I'm gonna have to tell the person next to me what kind of experiment I'm gonna do. I have to come up with something. I want you to think about something you're curious about. Think about something that you're interested in learning or understanding. Maybe it's something you heard someone talk about this weekend. Maybe it's, I want to try carnivore for a period of time. Maybe it's, I want to see if I can actually, for a month, get my steps over 10,000 steps per day. Maybe it's that you want to see if I strength train 3 times a week for 30 days, what happens? All of these things are experiments. And there's a paper that I discovered, because lest you think I'm making this up in terms of experiments, there was a paper I discovered, it's called, and you can look this up, feel free to take a photo of that slide, the N of one clinical trial, the ultimate strategy for individualized medicine. I think it is, because individualized medicine for you and determining what works well for your body is the best way to figure out how you are going to become harder to kill. I'll give you examples of some experiments you might consider. Some of these are experiments I've done on myself. I'm going to share with you probably my most exciting experiment that I did earlier this year. Wait for it. I did not eat food for 5 days. Okay? You guys, I was terrified to do this experiment. I had started intermittent fasting a number of years ago, and I've become very good at intermittent fasting. I haven't eaten anything yet this morning, for example. And so then when I was intermittent fasting for a period of a year or two, I thought, well, let's see if I can go a full day without food. And I was able to achieve that. And then I said, okay, well, now that I've done a full day, maybe I can do this 36-hour thing, and I can eat dinner on Sunday night, I can not eat at all on Monday, and then I'll break my fast with breakfast on Tuesday morning. And I kept telling myself, all that is, Kristen, is 1 day of not eating and 2 sleeps. Remember how when you were little, or you say to your kids, how many sleeps until we get to Christmas? I do that to myself. How many sleeps until I get to be on stage at Heart to Kill Summit? How many sleeps? So you may think of something in terms of what is something I'm curious about, and I want to see how I would feel if I accomplished that. After I worked up to a 36-hour fast, then it turned into a 72-hour fast. I did 3 days without food. Now I perfected the 3-day fast for a series of a few years, and finally I decided to do a 5-day fast. I'm going to share with you my results, because the hypothesis that I created before I did this fast is, the question I was asking, could I fast for 5 days and not lose any lean muscle tissue? Now, most people, if you ask that question, they would say, no. Of course you're going to lose muscle if you don't eat. I think you're going to be really surprised with my results, so I can't wait to share that with you. Okay, so what is the scientific method? If you look up any definition of the scientific method, sometimes it's distinguished in like 5 or 6 parts, but really it comes down to these 3 things. If we are going to create an experiment using a scientific method, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a hypothesis. This is your curiosity question. What are you curious about? Maybe your question is, could I gain muscle and lose body fat at the same time? The answer is yes, by the way. I do this in my practice all the time. Most of the clients who hire me are individuals who are interested in changing their body composition. They say, Kristen, I want to have muscles like you, or Kristen, I want to have more energy, or Kristen, I want to just feel better. I want to wake up not feeling groggy. And so for many of them, I say that's going to start with us getting really intentional about what you are and are not putting into your mouth and how you are spending your time. It really comes down to that. We dive into all sorts of different tentacles of that, including what's your spiritual practice? Are you meditating? Do you do acupuncture? Are you drinking too much coffee? You know, all sorts of things. Are you allowing other people and their stressors to dictate how you feel every day? There are all sorts of things that we get into with that, but I just want you to think about what's a hypothesis. Maybe you guys, maybe you're curious about meditation and you think, boy, I wonder if I meditated every day for 30 days, if my whole central nervous system would feel better. You know, I wonder if I did something like try push-ups every day for a month, if my upper body would get stronger, if I would feel more accomplished when I started my day. There's all kinds of experiments that you could do. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to consider is to create a hypothesis, and whatever your hypothesis is, this is what you're going to share with the person sitting next to you before I get off this stage, okay? I'm previewing this many times because I really want you guys thinking about this. The second thing that you're going to do then, in the scientific method, is you're actually going to conduct the experiment. So you're going to conduct this over a period of a week, a month, 6 months, a year. And again, I'm going to give you some examples of other experiments you could conduct or that you could consider, but you need to think about what is the actual experiment I'm going to do on my body. How am I going to take all of this amazing information that I have learned at this conference, and you're going to learn a ton more today. Just wait until you hear from Dr. Saidas. He and I were just talking in the back room, and I'm very, very excited for you to hear what he has to say. Wait until you hear about Dave Feldman's work. When he gets up here to tell you about the groundbreaking research that he is doing with cholesterol, you're going to be blown away. It's so exciting. But you guys can do something all on your own with your own experiment. And then finally, probably the most important part, if you really want to conduct an experiment where you actually understand, was the hypothesis that I created, did I actually prove the question that I set out to prove? What happened? So you want to measure the results. We need to say, where are we starting and what happens when we got to the end of it? And so for me, a lot of my experiments, because I'm a really curious person when it comes to body composition, and I love playing with the physical body and learning about what it is capable of, I would do a DEXA scan at the beginning and a DEXA scan at the end, or a bod pod at the beginning and a bod pod at the end. There are different ways that you can measure from the beginning to the end. You could consider, I'm going to wear a blood sugar monitor for a month, and I'm going to see what are my average blood sugars before I started this experiment of, I'm making it up, carnivore for 30 days. And now at the end of 30 days, what are my average blood sugars? And did my blood sugars improve? Did they go down? Did I become more insulin sensitive? Remember, insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance are on opposite sides of the spectrum, right? We become more insulin resistant as the spectrum goes forward, and then at the end of that spectrum, it becomes type 2 diabetes. So we want to work to become more insulin sensitive. That may be an experiment you do. How might you do that? You might strength train. You might practice fasting. You might engage in cold therapy. You might eat more low carb. You might really reduce or cut out all processed food and processed sugars. All of these things are glimmers into experiments that you could conduct. Okay, so here's some potentials. And now, I will tell you, I have done all of these. So in that first experiment, why don't you consider taking creatine for 90 days and see if you can gain muscle and lose fat? That's what I did. And how did I figure that out? Well, I decided in May of 2021, after seeing how much amazing research had come out about creatine, and I will admit I must have been kind of asleep under a rock because apparently it's been there for years, I just didn't know about it. And so I was very impressed with the research on creatine, and I thought, well, I've never taken that, I wonder if that could help me. So I did a DEXA scan in May of 2021. I started taking creatine every day. I didn't change my workouts, I didn't change my food. I went through 90 days of taking 5 grams of creatine each day, and then at the end of that experiment in August, I did a DEXA scan. And you know what I discovered? I discovered that I was able to put on 3 pounds of lean muscle tissue and lose 2% body fat in 90 days. Isn't that amazing? I wouldn't have known that unless I would have conducted that experiment. Okay, so let me just tell you about creatine now, because I want to make sure you guys understand this. Creatine is actually not, unfortunately, magic pixie dust that you sprinkle on your biceps and they get bigger. It's not. What creatine is going to do, and I like to demo things, so if you guys will bear with me, I'm going to show you in a push-up. Creatine is going to allow you to do this. So if I'm in a push-up, and I am doing down in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 10, 9, 8. Can you see me shaking? 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. When you take creatine, it allows you to do more of those before you hit failure. It allows you, if you're in a bicep curl and you used to fail at, let's say, 8 reps, now that you have extra creatine stored in your muscle tissue, you could now get 10 reps or 11 reps. It actually, I always say, gives you a fifth gear. And without getting into all of the nerdy science about it, even though I love science, what creatine is helping your body do is to take ADP, which is adenosine diphosphate, and rephosphorylate it into ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, and that is the energy currency in your body. Does that make sense? So our body's stores of ATP are not that significant. We don't have a ton of storage for ATP, but we have a ton of storage for creatine. You can store 5 grams of creatine in every single pound of lean muscle tissue on your body. 5 grams, and I'm taking 5 grams every day. So what was cool is I was noticing in my workouts, all my weights are going up. I can do more reps. And so that's how creatine works, to actually build tissue, which of course then is going to allow you to lose body fat. You also might see if you can fast for 5 days and do it without losing muscle, like I did. And I'll show you my DEXA results about that in a little bit, because that was very, very exciting for me. You might decide to eat strict carnivore for 30 days. Now, if you were here yesterday and saw me on the fitness panel, I shared, I did that experiment in December, and it was not great for me. I mean, we're talking major digestive distress, without getting into the details, problematic. Like, some days couldn't leave the house. That didn't work for me. It works wonderfully for other people. You know, that's not for people's consequence, but how would I have known whether carnivore was good for me, or whether it worked for me, at least where I'm at right now, unless I had conducted an experiment? Here's some more experiments. And I've done these. Consume a bodybuilding style diet for 30 days to see if you can improve your body composition. I have clients hire me all the time who say, Kristen, I'm really, really stuck, and here I've been doing this low carb thing forever. I'm strength training, I'm doing all this stuff, and now I'm stuck. Do you have anything more strict? And I say, well, we can try a bodybuilding style diet for a month and see if we can motivate or accelerate some fat loss. Or maybe you want to do a 2-week cleanse. Maybe you want to do a detox with me, and we can still see if we can get some of that stagnant energy and toxicity out of your liver to make your metabolism work better. Remember, guys, for all of us who consume a low-carb lifestyle and we consume a lot of fat, I very much recommend, and I run this course every quarter, I very much recommend that you consider at some point in your life engaging in a 2-week period of nutritional detoxification. And the reason I say that is, your liver is the organ that's responsible for metabolizing all of the fat in your body, and you have a sluggish liver because heaven forbid you don't have a gallbladder, or heaven forbid you have a lot of years of alcohol use, or you have been eating a really high-fat diet for a long time, or you were exposed to mold, or you live in an environment where there's all sorts of chemicals, and you live in Iowa and there's cornfields spraying pesticides around you all the time, you may have a sluggish liver. And I see clients all the time go through a 2-week detox with me that all of a sudden are like, oh my God, that's the jump start I needed. My metabolism seems to be working better now. So you might even do something like that. You might consider meditating in the morning and at night for 30 days. In June of this year, just last month, I came off my very first Joe Dispenza meditation retreat. It was extremely powerful. And I committed after that week-long meditation retreat that I was going to meditate every morning and every night for 30 days and see how much it changed my central nervous system. It's pretty remarkable. You might even consider, you guys, running, or maybe just walking 10,000 steps a day. You might consider signing up for a race. There are so many different kinds of experiments that you can do. And that's what I want you to just open up to, is figure out what are you curious about, and how can you take something that you are learning at this conference, something that you have been inspired by, something that you are curious about, something someone else did. Okay? One thing for me was doing this 365 days without alcohol. I was so inspired by Jamie and Ben deciding to do that last October that I told her in October, I will join you at some point, I'm just not ready yet. She didn't bug me about it. She didn't say, Kristen, are you going to do that? She just let me come to the conclusion on my own, which 6 months after she started her experiment, I did. So I haven't had a drop of alcohol in my body since May. Now, I wasn't drinking all that much anyways, but like many people, I would drink when I went on vacation. I would drink on holidays. I would drink on special occasions. I would drink when I went out to fancy dinners. I would drink on my birthday. My birthday's in 2 weeks, guys. I'm thinking this will probably be the first year I haven't had alcohol on my birthday. How weird is that? I mean, at least, of course, since I was 21. So it's just interesting to see, you know, and I'm learning about my body because I'm doing this experiment. I'm learning, you can have fun without alcohol. Who knew? Right? It's amazing. You don't need it. I'm still convinced, by the way, and I've said this to a lot of people, possible in our lifetime, we will look at alcohol the way we look at smoking. It's legal, people do it, but we really don't respect it. We really are like, God, you know how bad that is for your health. Why are you still doing that? I really think that could happen in our lifetime. It's really exciting, right? So your homework is that you are going to now tell someone sitting next to you what's one experiment that you're going to do after you leave this conference. So wait, go ahead. You think of something? Tell the person sitting next to you, please.
10 days in a row.
Honestly, these also intrigue me as well. Earlier in the moon down and meditating also intrigue me.
Awesome.
Mine are like 15 days of carnivore, 15 days of keto.
Okay, and the other thing that I want you guys to do, in addition to telling the person you just told,
Oh, I've talked
I really want you guys to write it down, okay? There is a lot of research about the fact that when we write something down that we're going to do, we are umpteen times more likely to actually honor our commitment if we write it down. So I also want you to write it down. What are you going to do to make yourself harder to kill? It may be the no alcohol. I have a client right now who is a really powerful executive at a major company in the US. She's actually an international executive. And she said, Kristen, I saw you talking on your Instagram one day on your story about how you're going a whole year without alcohol. So I decided, since I'm going to be working with you for 3 months, I'm not going to drink alcohol for 3 months. Amazing. That's an experiment. So she's doing that experiment because she was inspired by someone else. Every single one of you can inspire someone else in your life to do something to improve your health and make you harder to kill. I want to really just quickly, before I end, I want to show you the results of this fasting experiment because every time I talk to people about this, they are fascinated. And P.S., so was I. I thought this was remarkable. I set out to do this experiment with no expectations, but I was very hopeful. Could I actually maintain my muscle during a 5-day fast? So let me just walk you through what this is. If you look on the right-hand side, you can see it says February 2nd. So that was day 1 of the fast. So I started at 142 pounds with lean mass of 108 pounds and then body fat of 20.1. That's actually a little high for me. I like when I'm about in the 16-17% range, but here it was, post-holidays, February, my body fat went up a little bit. That's okay. So I also, if you'll notice, my visceral fat. Now, does everyone know what visceral fat is? Visceral fat is the bad fat. It's the fat around your organs. This is it's the most dangerous fat you can have in your body. So we want to reduce that as much as we can. Okay? To find out your visceral fat, I very much recommend that you get a DEXA scan. This is one disadvantage to a BodPod, even though I use those in my practice all the time, because at least in Minnesota, they are cheaper to get and more easy to get. But the visceral fat number is very important for you guys to know. Some people that appear lean on the outside have very high visceral fat. Some people that appear heavy on the outside have very low visceral fat. It just depends on the individual. So don't make any preconceived notions about where you are unless you really get that tested. But here's what was fascinating to me about this experiment. And I don't want you to think this was just me, because the next slide I'm going to show you is one of my guy friends who did this experiment with me. He said, Kristen, if you're going to do that, I'd love to just kind of tag onto your research. I'm also curious, so could I do that experiment too? I said, absolutely. So I shared my protocol with him. He and I communicated over text for 5 days. I said, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. We went and did hyperbaric oxygen therapy together midway through the 5 days because I was very interested in how we could catalyze more autophagy and really engage in that cellular cleanup to really get rid of all the free radicals in our body. So if you'll notice that after, on day 5, on the 6th of February, what I had experienced is, if you look at the total mass number, notice how I lost 2 pounds total mass, okay? But if you look at the lean mass, my lean mass, you guys, went up by 2 pounds. What? Gained muscle during a 5-day fast? Now keep in mind, in order to do this, and this is why I want you to understand that my protocol was very specific, I know, because I've been researching this for years, and I've been experimenting with my body, and I've been in ketosis for lengthy periods of time and out of ketosis, I knew that if I could stay in ketosis for those 5 days, my body would spare lean muscle tissue. My body, in the absence of food, would not start to cannibalize my lean tissue because it doesn't do that when you're in ketosis. Ketosis is muscle sparing. That's a really important component of this experiment. If I would have just done a water-only fast, I wouldn't have had these results. I did take exogenous ketones. So did my friend. I did have a little bit of MCT oil in my coffee, or decaf coffee, because I wasn't drinking coffee, for days 1 and 2, just to make sure I stayed in ketosis. I made sure that I did not do any HIIT activity that would require me to be producing, that would require me to steal from my glycogen stores, because I needed to stay in ketosis. So I told my friend, and I did this through walking only. I did strength train on day 2. I strength trained on day 5. When I went into strength train on day 5, 110 hours fasted, I had one of the best lifts of my life. My trainer was like, what have you been taking? I'm like, well, my ketones are at 5.2, and my blood sugar is about 50 or less, and I feel out of this world. It was bananas to me. Like, I couldn't get over how good I felt, but I wouldn't have known that unless I had conducted this experiment, right? So the biggest thing that I want you to see, other than the fact that my body fat went down by almost 3 points, 2.5 points, look at my visceral fat. 0.1. I almost eliminated the visceral fat in my body by fasting for 5 days. So now I've concluded, and I can't point you to a paper on this, but I've now concluded that for my clients who have really high visceral fat, after I get them to really transition to a low-carb lifestyle, after I get them after several weeks of working together to become metabolically flexible, I now use 36-hour fasts and longer to really, really stimulate that visceral fat loss, to get their cardiovascular risk down, because it's so important for health. So here is what happened to my friend. You can see on his, he started out at 182 pounds, he went down to 180 pounds, his lean mass went up by 1 pound, he went from 152 to 153. He started at 11.9% body fat, he went down to 10.5, and his visceral fat went down from 0.7 to 0.3. I forgot to mention also one of the other statistics. Notice his T-score is 2.5, and I'm a little nervous to backpedal on this because I'm afraid it won't work, but I'm just going to try it. Oh, good. Okay. Notice my T-score. My T-score went up. Does anyone know what a T-score is? This is your bone density. How strong are your bones? Mine went up without food. Crazy to me. But again, I lifted and I stayed in ketosis. Those were the 2 critical components of this fast for me. I had to strength train, and I had to, and by the way, going back to my creatine experiment, I also took creatine. Creatine doesn't have any calories or anything else, it doesn't break it fast, but I wanted to make sure that I was maximizing the results of this as best I could. So I'm not suggesting that you guys have to do a 5-day fast for your experiment, but I'm really glad that you already shared with someone what you're going to do. I don't care how small you think it is or how big of a challenge you think it is. Here was a challenge that I did that terrified me, and it was so exciting to be able to accomplish it. So thank you so much for your attention. I have my website here. I am most active on social media on Instagram. I'm also a little bit active on LinkedIn. I really probably need to get back on Twitter at some point in this millennium. But those are the ways that you can reach out to me. I'm very, very honored to be here. Thank you so much for your attention this morning. I know it's early, so I really appreciate it. Thank you. Happy to be here.